Today we continue to share a lesser-known horror film, The Deep House. It is said that this is the most haunted house in Ukraine, filled with endless resentment, and what's even more terrifying, it is hidden deep underwater. Anyone who has ever attempted to explore it has met with misfortune without exception. A young couple, refusing to believe the rumors, decided to dive in. But as soon as they entered, they discovered something horrifying. Inside a hidden chamber of the mansion, 2 bodies were hanging, wearing gruesome masks. Below the bodies lay a massive totem, seemingly serving as some kind of special seal. Just then, a noise came from the corner of the room. When they went to check, they found jars and bottles on a table, filled with human remains. At that moment, they finally realized that something was terribly wrong and turned to leave immediately. But when they swam to the entrance, they discovered, to their horror, that the way they came in had been replaced by a solid brick wall. Panic set in instantly, and regret flooded their minds. They wished they had never stepped into this cursed place. It turns out that Ben and Tina are a couple who run an adventure vlog. To gain more views, they have explored countless paranormal locations. One day, Ben came across information online about a hidden lake in Ukraine, and they decided to investigate. Upon arriving at the town near the lake, they noticed it was eerily quiet, with many houses up for sale. In the town square stood a large monument, covered with names like a giant gravestone. Tina eventually managed to gather some clues about the hidden lake's location. However, when they arrived, they were in for a surprise. The place was nothing like a mysterious sight. Instead, it was a lively holiday destination, full of tourists. Just as Ben was about to give up in disappointment, a local man named Pierre told them that deep within the forest, there was an isolated branch of the lake, and at the bottom of that lake, an entire mansion remained perfectly preserved. Not wanting to waste their trip, they decided to follow Pierre. On the way, Pierre shared an unsettling story. 50 years ago, a devastating flood submerged the entire village under the water. Few people knew that deep within the forest, there was another hidden lake, a paradise for diving enthusiasts. Hearing this, Ben and Tina became even more determined to uncover the mystery of the underwater mansion. This could be the breakthrough they needed to go viral. After an exhausting journey through the woods, they finally reached the legendary location. Excited, they geared up for their dive. But just as they were about to enter the water, Pierre muttered something under his breath.
Qu'est-ce que vous avez dit?
All I heard was like, mom, dash mum, blah, blah, blah.
Nothing. Drop it.
His strange behavior made Tina uneasy, but she was too focused on the adventure ahead to pay attention. She strapped on her oxygen tank and followed Ben into the depths of the lake. According to Pierre, they only needed to descend about 50 meters before they would see the staircase leading into the submerged town. However, they encountered trouble right from the start when Tina's equipment got tangled in underwater branches. It almost felt like a warning, yet they brushed it off and continued swimming forward. Soon they spotted a staircase, confirming that Pierre hadn't lied to them. Following the steps further, they quickly arrived at the entrance of the mansion. But eerily, a statue of the Virgin Mary was hanging on the front door. In the local culture, such statues are meant to ward off evil. However, instead of feeling alarmed, Ben and Tina became even more convinced that there was something valuable hidden inside. But Tina soon noticed something was off. After passing through the gate, the school of fish that had been swimming around them just moments ago had completely vanished. And then, in the murky depths ahead, the shadow of a grand mansion slowly emerged. They swam closer and found the mansion's door firmly locked with a heavy padlock, impossible to open. With no other option, they split up to search for another way in. Eventually, they discovered an unlocked window in the attic, but just as they pushed it open, a giant catfish darted out, startling them. For safety, they decided to send in a drone first to scout the interior. Once they confirmed that everything looked fine, they officially began their exploration of the underwater mansion. Inside the attic, the first thing that caught their eyes was the furniture, intact and untouched. Strangely enough, despite being submerged for 50 years, none of it showed any signs of decay. The water quality here must be exceptional. As they examined their surroundings, a shadow suddenly floated out from behind the couch. Realizing it was a false alarm, they continued their exploration and moved into another room. The water in this room was noticeably murkier, reducing visibility to less than a meter. They had no choice but to send in the drone once again. Just then, a strange sound came through Tina's headset. Ben reassured her that it must be interference from the signal. After all, the drone's footage showed nothing unusual. They continued searching the house and soon came across framed portraits of the family that once once lived there, but the moment Tina laid eyes on them, an uneasy feeling crept over her. Something about the paintings seemed unsettling. They swam into another room, only to find it filled with photographs of children. And then, something even stranger happened. As Ben adjusted his camera, he caught sight of a shadowy figure standing behind the curtain. But when he pulled it back, there was nothing there. Brushing it off as a trick of the light, they decided to push forward with their exploration. At that moment, the drone's signal began flickering, but the footage still showed nothing unusual. Ben assumed it was just a minor technical issue. After a quick reboot, they continued their journey. Descending the staircase to the first floor, they planned to open the front door from the inside, only to make a chilling discovery. There was another door beyond it, one made entirely of solid steel. Even more disturbing, the surface was covered with countless handprints, as if people had once been trapped inside, desperately trying to escape. Just as Ben and Tina were trying to make sense of this, a piano suddenly started playing in the next room. Could there be other living people in the house? With that question in mind, they cautiously made their way to the piano room. But when they arrived, there wasn't a single soul in sight. Ben speculated that perhaps a stray fish had accidentally brushed against the keys. But as they ventured deeper, even he began to feel that something wasn't right. After all, who would collect missing children's reports and display them on the walls? Despite their growing unease, they were determined to finish exploring the house for the sake of their video. Then, as their drone entered the kitchen, the camera suddenly picked up a shadowy figure. They quickly swam closer, only to realize it was just a statue of Jesus. But upon closer inspection, Ben's heart raced with excitement. Behind the statue, there was a hidden chamber. Eagerly, they forced open the door. But they had no idea that this decision would soon bring them a catastrophic fate. Inside, the water was thick and cloudy. They sent out the drone again to scout ahead, ensuring there was no immediate danger before swimming inside. The chamber was filled with scattered videotapes and human-like mannequins. Just as they let their guard down, a pair of feet suddenly appeared in front of them, sending them into a panic as they turned and swam away. This led to the scene at the beginning of the story. With their exit mysteriously blocked, Ben and Tina realized they might never make it out of this place. Tina completely broke down, but Ben immediately calmed her, reminding her to control her breathing. Given their current situation, they had to be extremely cautious about their oxygen supply. If they ran out, they wouldn't survive. Tina gradually steadied herself, but just then, a shadowy figure appeared behind Ben. Ben dismissed it as Tina's imagination, thinking she was just too nervous. He reassured her and suggested they search for another exit together. They tried breaking a window to escape, but underwater they simply didn't have enough strength. That's when Tina noticed a familiar catfish. It must know the way out. Following the catfish, they swam back to the most eerie hidden room. But the moment they entered, the catfish slipped through a small window and swam away. The window was too narrow for an adult to fit through, leaving them no choice but to search for another exit on their own. That's when Tina noticed something. The two hanging bodies had a vent right above them. She was about to swim up to check it out when classical music suddenly played through her headset. She assumed Ben had turned it on, but Ben swore he hadn't done anything. Right now, their priority was finding a way out. Tina swam up to the vent, only to find that it was also locked. She turned to tell Ben they couldn't escape that way, but when she looked down, her heart nearly stopped. Ben was gone, and so were the two bodies. Panic overwhelmed her as she frantically called out for Ben, but the nightmare was just beginning. Suddenly, a hook from one of the chains caught her, and blood began clouding the water. As more chains appeared, Tina became entangled in them. Just as she thought it was all over, she heard Ben's voice, and instantly regained her composure. But Ben just looked at her in confusion and pointed behind him. The two bodies were still hanging there, completely untouched. But Tina had just seen the chains empty with her own eyes. Determined to prove that the corpses were lifeless, Ben removed the masks from their faces, only to discover that they were the original owners of the mansion. As they stood there unsure of what to do, they turned around, only to see the two corpses suddenly open their eyes. They had come back to life. Terrified, Ben and Tina swam for their lives, but the two figures quickly followed. They barely managed to lock themselves inside another room before the corpses could reach them. Trapped, with no way out, their only escape route was the chimney. But the opening was too small. They had to remove their oxygen tanks. To prevent getting separated, Ben tied a rope around Tina and released the drone to provide light. At first, everything went smoothly, but just as they were about to reach the top, a pile of rocks suddenly collapsed from above. They had no time to dodge and were knocked unconscious on the spot. When Tina woke up, everything seemed normal again, but Ben was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Ben had somehow fallen into another part of the mansion. The rope that had connected him to Tina had been cut. His first instinct was to check the drone footage, but the drone had also been damaged by the falling debris. With no other options, he had to find a way out on his own, but the doors and windows were all locked. As he searched for clues, he stumbled upon a family tree on the wall. To his shock, he saw a familiar face, Pierre, the man who had brought them to this place. That's when Ben realized this entire place was a trap. He quickly used the drone to check on Tina's situation, and right then, a dark figure flashed across the screen. Before Ben could warn Tina to be careful, the door in his room suddenly creaked open. Panicked, he quickly hid under the bed. And sure enough, a ghostly woman staggered into the room. Seeing the woman move toward the other side of the room, Ben breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he thought he was safe, he turned around. At the same time, on Tina's side, the dining room lights flickered wildly, and a male ghost appeared in the distance, rushing straight toward her. Terrified, Tina bolted, running as fast as she could. She followed the drone's guidance and finally found Ben, standing blankly in a second-floor room. But something was off. Ben's oxygen mask was broken, and he looked completely dazed, like he was possessed. Tina assumed he was just in shock, so she held his hand tightly, trying to comfort him. But then, she felt something strange. Something was moving inside her clothes. Ben calmly told her to stay calm, explaining it was just a snake. The next moment, a small snake slithered into Tina's mask. Then, Ben told her to open her mouth and swallow it. Of course, Tina refused. She ripped off her mask in a panic. But at that moment, the snake suddenly disappeared. Ben then explained that the house was playing tricks on them. It knows our fears and makes them real. But soon, we won't be afraid of anything anymore. With that, Ben turned and led Tina away. It was then that Tina realized something was seriously wrong with him. She tried to stop him, but Ben urged her to trust him. Instead of returning the way they came, he moved a cabinet aside, revealing a hidden passage behind it. Eventually, they arrived at a hidden living room in the basement. Tina felt despair creeping in. This didn't look like an escape route at all. But Ben, ignoring her, started playing a film reel and began telling the story of the house's owners. The Montagnac couple had 2 children. They believed that making sacrifices to a dark entity would bring them wealth, so they kidnapped children from nearby farms, offering them up as part of their rituals. Eventually, their crimes were discovered. Furious villagers stormed the mansion, seeking revenge for their lost children. They dragged the couple's daughter, Sarah, away and executed her. Then, they locked the Montagnac couple in this very basement. In the chaos, their son, Pierre, managed to escape. Just then, the film screen suddenly tore open, and Sarah crawled out from behind it. Tina was horrified, but Ben remained completely unshaken. Seeing his reaction, Tina realized Ben was already under Sarah's control. Without hesitation, she dove behind the torn screen, desperately searching for another way out. And she was right. Above her was a loosely covered opening. But as Tina was about to leave, Ben grabbed her tightly, his mind completely consumed. He insisted that Tina stay with him forever. Desperately struggling, Tina had no choice but to stab Ben with a small knife. The searing pain brought Ben back to his senses. They wasted no time. They had to get out. But before they could swim to safety, Sarah appeared behind them. Before Tina could react, Sarah drove her blade into Ben over and over. Tina could only watch as Ben's body slowly sank into the depths. Heartbroken, but knowing she had no other choice, Tina turned and swam upward. However, Sarah refused to let her go and immediately rushed forward, grabbing Tina tightly. Tina's oxygen alarm blared. She was running out of air. With no other option, she stripped off all her gear and made a desperate swim for the surface. Miraculously, she managed to shake off Sarah. She escaped the cursed mansion, but she was still 50 meters underwater. Without proper training, removing her mask had drained her final ounce of energy. She could see the sunlight just within reach, but she could no longer swim. Tina drowned, becoming one with the hidden lake forever. After watching this movie, you might wonder, is the deep sea really that terrifying? Can thalassophobia be real? Well, that depends on the person. People with this condition often feel trapped in an enclosed space with no way to escape. And let's not forget, the ocean is vast, unknown, and filled with mysteries beyond human understanding. For those who can't swim, the deep sea is a terrifying abyss. This film takes that fear to the extreme, being almost entirely shot underwater. With elements of social media culture, deep sea exploration, adventure, and horror, it's a rare and gripping addition to the genre. So, if you're into deep sea horror, this one's definitely worth checking out. That's it for today. See you next time.